Hello and welcome to my video on how to paint driftwood using watercolours. Now, many of you will know that you can't usually paint on driftwood with watercolours because the paint will soak into the wood. But if you use something called watercolour ground, then it will stay a bit more on the surface and it will act like watercolour paper. So that's what I'm trying today. I've never used this before, and the one I'll be using is transparent watercolour ground. It's a make by Daniel Smith, who are very good make of watercolour paints and this watercolour ground. You can also make your own watercolour ground out of gesso and modelling paste, which I have yet to try. But this is me giving it a go the first time round, painting anything on driftwood. This is a real-time video. It takes about 20 minutes for me to paint these fish, and I'm just having a bit of a chat about what I'm learning as I go. So I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like. Thank you very much. So this is some driftwood that I got from the beach. I've got no idea how anything will go on. So I can barely see this pencil line. I think I'm just going to paint directly onto it. I'm going to use white for the first time, I think probably in my life, just to see what happens. I painted the ground on last night. It's actually quite interesting using white like this. Now I don't know what kind of fish these are. Seems to be staying on the surface more than had I not. What I'll do is try and do the same painting on the other side, and you can see what it looks like without having put the ground down. It's really strange. I've only ever painted watercolours on paper, so it's actually a really weird sort of feel. Going to try and just see what it looks like with a bit of green. I might add a bit of this indigo sort of colour if I can. It does act a bit like watercolour still. Very strange. What a weird experience. It's quite fun, really. Right, I think we had a bit of shading down here. And the tail was quite of this fish is very dark. Now I live by the sea, so I had in mind if this works quite well, then I could just have a limitless number of canvases. Now it's not worked very well here where it's rucked up a little bit, unfortunately. I am getting quite wet on wet effects. I wonder how long this will take to dry. That'll be an interesting one. Right, well that's one done. I just put one layer down of the ground because I didn't know what I didn't know what it would be like. Perhaps next time I'll experiment with putting different numbers of layers down. So the ground I'm using is Daniel Smith's. Daniel Smith is a good make of paint. They do good stuff, but it's a little bit on the expensive side. I really like using the white paint actually. It's a bit like using normal, acrylics or something like that. You can make ground, as it turns out, with so you can get clear ground and this transparent ground that I'm using now. Just going to add an extra touch of white over here to sort of try and get a bit of sheen. You know what I might do later is to add a bit of iridescence onto it. I can see it does soak into the wood a little bit, which I suppose is kind of what you want to some extent. Otherwise, why would you use watercolours? So you can make watercolour ground yourself using gesso and modelling paste. I've never done it. It was on my list of things to do. Still is on my list of things to do. And I can never work my way through my list of things to do. I'm going to really try and get a bit of sheen here. So where I feel like it's soaked in a little bit too much, I've just gone over a little bit more. Done a second layer. I suppose it's no different to using normal watercolours, is it? If you haven't got the strength of colour that you would like, then keep adding to it. Just going to add a little bit more green. Over here. I suppose what I'm interested in is to see whether I can, if there's any advantage to using watercolours when painting on things like wood. Because I think the beauty of watercolours is that you get all these sort of effects of the ethereal effects with the watercolours, and you sort of wet on wet to like a real extent. I'm not sure yet whether I can sort of feel that with this, but you know what? I might pop out to the beach in a minute and just get some more driftwood. Try and get something a little bit flatter. I think this is just one that I had in my little driftwood collection. It's even like a little bit of purple. I might add. There's lots of different shades in this, in things when you sort of look closely. I think I'm coming to the point where I might need to wait for it to dry for a minute to do a different layer. The other thing I usually do with these to dry things is to put them on the radiator, but I don't think that's going to particularly work with this one. What I haven't tried to do is to pull up any colour. I haven't tried to do that yet. So that's where you use a damp brush to pick up colour. I can't imagine it working. And I quite like my, I don't want to do that yet with my fish, because I think they're okay at the moment. I think in a minute I'll see what it looks like if I varnish it as well. I've got some wax. I think I'll probably use Dorland's wax. Anyway, I'm going to put this on the radiator and see what happens. So the white keeps soaking in quite a lot, so I've really smushed it up now. Because I think it does need to be quite a bit whiter for it to have an impact on this wood. Just using my the sword brush that I usually use. So I'm putting on this white on really, really thickly, and I hope that it will stay a bit better. Would have been interesting if I'd have done 2 coats on the same bit of wood, maybe on the other side. So maybe on the other side I'll split it between I'll split it with wood that I have not put ground on at all, just to see what that's like. And I'll put 2 coats on another bit and try and sort of draw the same, a similar thing. I suppose one of the things I quite like about watercolours is the transparency, and as soon as you start putting white down, it's not as transparent. So I don't know, I'm reserving judgment on this. One of the options, I suppose, is I could have painted the driftwood first with something, and then gone over the top with my ground. It's staying quite at the top, so that's good. I mean, it's not soaking in too much as you might expect it to. Just a bit of wet on wet over here just to see what that looks like. I'm actually a vegetarian, so it feels a bit strange drawing dead animals to me. Be nice if they were still alive, but they don't pose quite so well when they're still alive, do they? I'm going to be really interested to try the wax on this to see if it sort of brings the colours out a little bit, because I suppose they keep on getting sucked up into the wood a little bit. I'm undecided as to whether to do a shadow. I think maybe I will do a shadow. Yeah, I'll do a shadow. I covered the entire paper with watercolour, or driftwood with watercolour ground. Trying to make it seem like a shadow and not like an outline. Right, I think I might leave that to dry for another minute or two. I'll be back. Thank you so much for joining me on my experimentation painting these fish on the driftwood today. I had a great time doing it and learnt quite a lot, and I hope that you have too. In general, I think it was quite an interesting experiment. I did see that you could manipulate it a little bit like wet on wet, just like you would on watercolour paper. There are other things that I would like to give more of a go regarding like the picking up colour. I'd love to actually do a portrait on some wood maybe next, so I'll give that a go. If you've used watercolour ground, I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below.